For work this year, I had to go to a training where my role was called the captain. Someone was describing my role to the rest of the group, and he said she's like a traffic cop. But because we are a progressive organization and generally opposed to policing, especially around traffic violations, we were trying to think of a different phrase to refer to that job. Crossing guard, safety patrol. I remembered that on Kiarostami's Wikipedia page, it said he was a traffic policeman. Traffic policeman is worse than traffic cop.
Probably just while he was in school, because after that he started making movies. Movies that, according to Wikipedia, capture the essence of Persian poetry.
When I was younger, I thought Paris was in the Middle East because I thought it was where Persian people were from. I also thought this road we used to drive on that my mom referred to as the Hilly Road was in Philadelphia because Hilly and Philly sound alike. There's a few things I think are interesting about Kiarostami. He stayed in Iran after the revolution. I'm not sure what that would have felt like. He made the taste of cherry, but in the movie they actually say mulberries. I don't get that. And he died in Paris. He didn't leave during the revolution, but he left to hopefully not die, and then he did die. There was a crowd at the airport waiting for the plane carrying his body. I'm curious where in the plane they had put his body. He's accused of raping Mania Akbari. She also said he used her footage without her permission. I just want you to have the full picture. Because in the Wind-Up Bird Chronicles, Cinnamon and Nutmeg go down all the possible paths of their story. It wasn't even their story, but they made up so much of it that it might as well have been. In it, the soldiers had to kill all the animals in the zoo. Because of the war, they were nervous they would get out and not sure what would happen then. The scenes are really horrible at the zoo, and Cinnamon and Nutmeg think about who each person there could have been, what they could have felt and seen and smelled, not just that day, but other days, any day that they could think of. And eventually the story wasn't a story, but just a whole world. And then Nutmeg stopped talking. Maybe that's why, if there's a God, we don't know. Making a word seems so silly when you've made a whole world. Ershadi is the actor in The Taste of Cherry. He wasn't an actor before the movie, but Kiarostami just saw him and asked him to act in it. The movie is mostly just shots of his face as he drives through the outskirts of Tehran. He's planning to kill himself, and he's wanting to find someone who can bury his body after he does it. I don't understand why that's so important, but everyone keeps saying no, even when he offers lots of money and really begs. Eventually, though, one guy agrees. I don't remember the movie super well. I was very high the first time I saw it, and I remember I was trying really hard to feel something, but couldn't quite do it. I watched the movie after listening to Ling Ma read Nicole Krauss's short story, Seeing Ershadi, on the New Yorker fiction podcast. Ling Ma wrote Severance, a 2008 science fiction novel about a fungal infection originating from China that turns into a global pandemic. I wonder if she's worried that she possesses some power in the universe she doesn't understand. Ma said she chose Seeing Ershadi to read on the podcast because she doesn't get it. It is a weird story. It reads like nonfiction. The main character is a dancer and watches The Taste of Cherry. She becomes, quote, obsessed with Ershadi's face after seeing the movie, and then thinks she sees him while on a dance trip in Japan. She tells her friend about this experience, and her friend says something very similar happened to her right after she saw The Taste of Cherry for the first time. The story goes on a while. The author tries to make sense of what the movie could mean to her. What I knew of love had always stemmed from desire, from the wish to be altered or thrown off course by some uncontrollable force. But the way she felt towards Ershadi was different. She likens it to seeing kinship for the first time. She wanted to be thrown off course, but what she saw was something she had in herself all along. The friends lose touch and have a brief email correspondence when they're a good bit older, no longer young, divorced, and kids, and far away from one another. They used to lay on the beach for hours, watch movies and smoke weed, talk of boys. The friend confesses that she had a different interpretation of the movie now. They talk about the ending, how differently it can be seen, rain or stars against the black night. How much time we wasted, she wrote, believing that things came to us as gifts, through channels of wonder, in the forms of sign, in the love of men, in the name of God, rather than seeing them for what they were, strengths that we dragged up from the nothingness of our own depths. The movie ends with a breaking of the fourth wall. You see Kiarostami and Ershadi walking around the hills where Ershadi's grave is in the movie. There's soldiers marching by. It's spring and they're doing a sound check. It's the invisible hand, the hand that so magically can pull you in or push you off or take you somewhere. It's actually just some guys on a spring day with cameras and cigarettes. I don't know if that's more beautiful or sadder. And I still don't know. I like to believe in magic, Persian poetry, He Died in Paris, The Hilly Road That Isn't in Philadelphia, a novel that's worse and truer than what's actually going to happen. I looked up Nicole Krauss after listening to the short story. Her first novel was The History of Love. That was the first book that broke my heart. I read it when I was about 8 on a Nook I received for Christmas. Somehow I broke the Nook, and I never finished the book. For years, everything I wrote was exactly like the history of love. I used ambiguous pronouns. I tried to make everything as gently, throbbingly solemn. The book captures how life felt like for me. Nicole Krauss saw kinship in the look in her Shadi's eyes. I felt kinship when Nicole Krauss said, I want to say somewhere, I've tried to be forgiving, and yet there were times in my life, whole years, when anger got the better of me. Ugliness turned me inside out. There was a certain satisfaction in bitterness. I courted it. It was standing outside, and I invited it in. I was 8, but somehow I still felt that. And I knew I was in love when I understood the line. Once upon a time, there was a boy who loved a girl, and her laughter was a question he wanted to spend his whole life answering. Or better yet, what about you? Are you happiest and saddest right now than you've ever been? Of course I am. Why? Because nothing makes me happier, and nothing makes me sadder than you. Love has always made me sad, and I don't know why. Maybe it's Nicole Krauss's fault. And when I fell out of love, I knew because we met each other when we were young, before we knew enough about disappointment. And once we did, we reminded each other of it. After that, I spent a lot of time alone. There are 2 types of people in the world, those who prefer to be sad among others, and those who prefer to be sad alone. And then I tried to write, to make things, to have somewhere to put the things inside of me. I've been bitter, or Shadi's eyes, Krauss's love. The history of love has a lot of coincidences. I think my life has a lot as well. Susan Sontag praised Krauss's first novel. Sigrid Nunez wrote a biography of Susan Sontag. I mailed a book by Sigrid Nunez on one of the saddest days. I made my fall thoughts about the elk and the kitten, the ground dog on the day that Moxie left. I thought it was beautiful. I'm not as sure now. I like to know people's first memories, eating a donut that beads on someone's glasses, and I collect lists I find. I stopped believing in God when I was young, but now I don't know who was doing this to me, who is putting this all before me to find and see and feel. But that's not the question that bothers me truly. It's more so that if this is just my own depths from which I am dragging up the meaning of these moments, then there's no one to tell about it. No one is watching me. No one knows how specifically miraculous this life is. Loneliness. There is no organ that can take it all. If no one is doing this to me, then there's no one to tell, and the sky is either raining or shining dim stars, but it only matters to my eyes. No one else can see it.